majority stake. Meanwhile, HES has not immediately responded to the issue. Now, the Public Service Workers Union of the Ghana Revenue Authority has launched a housing project expected to see workers of the GRA own their own houses at flexible financial terms. The project, which happens to be the first of its kind, was launched at the premises of the Coconut Grove Regency Hotel in Accra. The housing project was mainly a collaboration between the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Trades Union Congress, and some other partners, ASEC Investment Limited and United Pension Trustees. The aim is to enable houses to be built for staff members who already own land and assist those who have started their projects but for financial reasons cannot complete them. Commissioner General of the GRA, Mr. George Blankson, expressed high hopes for the project, stating that the housing project will go a long way to help workers overcome the problem of house rentals.
Happily, in the past decade or two, there has been a transformation, a change. We now find a lot more workers, particularly those from the public sector, seeking to own their own houses. In those heady days, it was very common for a public service worker to retire and then go back to the family house and become the butt of the jokes of the family members. But now we have the situation changed completely. Take the very bottom of the income bracket in the public sector. The cleaners, the messengers, the drivers and all. If you conducted an interview among them or a census, you'll find that almost everybody is seeking to put up something for themselves. And to me, it is this quiet but very significant revolution which has greater impact on our lives as workers, especially when we have retired from service. And the initiative of the PSWU to ride on the crest of this tide to ensure that this revolution is given a new meaning. Instead of direct labor being used to build your own house, which requires so much time, so much energy, and sometimes by the time you retire, you have not even roofed it. And you may need to have a makeshift cover on it so that you can move in. Now, the initiative of the PSWU is saying, let us approach it more scientifically. Let us approach it relying on modern finance system and structures to have the worker own his own house at the time of retirement. And I believe this is an initiative that deserves commendation. And I will kindly request that we applaud their efforts.
Meanwhile, the tax advisor to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, Dr. Labissian, encouraged other working unions to emulate the GRA's examples.
I believe this is a project worth replicating by trade union groups in other establishments. I appeal to other workplace unions to emulate this worthy example.
In an interview, Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Kofi Asamoah, said the launch was one of its kind since it will go a long way to improve the lot of Ghanaian workers.
From all indications, a very good initiative by the Public Services Workers Union of the Ghana Revenue Authority. As you are no doubt aware, the biggest challenge in this country has been where workers have to put their head while working and also on retirement. Many people not wanting to go on retirement be an indication of where to put your head. And in view of the huge deficits that we have, I'm talking about housing deficits in the country, an initiative like this is very much welcome, where based on the contractual agreement drawn, within a year or two, houses will be put up for as many as possible workers of Ghana Revenue Authority. And that will be allocated to workers, and the deduction spread over some years, so 10 years and over. And because the income levels in this country is quite low, and also the fact that because of the economic challenges, workers find it difficult, putting up a house is not an easy thing. So we welcome such an initiative.
The housing project is expected to be completed in a year's time, and staff members are expected to complete payments within a minimum period of 10 years. Now, the outgoing Minister for Health, Hani Sherry Aite, has outlined the various activities, achievements and challenges of the ministry, as well as some major projects that is going to be put in place to improve health service delivery in Ghana.
The Ministry of Health made the press focused on 4 regulatory bodies under the ministry. Touching on the Food and Drug Authority, the outgoing health minister outlined some activities of the organization to ensure quality and efficacy of products and medicines and to maintain infrastructure. According to the authority, since its inception, it has been able to put a program in place to create awareness in the regulatory requirement for clinical trial and consumable products since 2008. The FDA, however, faces a number of challenges which have it difficult to curb the incidence of illicit drug smuggling in the market, among others. The minister disclosed measures which the authority is putting in place to overcome some of these challenges.
For the interim, we are also encouraging local production of drugs, because we believe that if we can empower the manufacturing companies in Ghana, we can produce a lot of drugs locally, and then at the same time create employment for many Ghanaians, because there will be the market chain of drugs, and that the retailer section will bring a lot of employment for many Ghanaians. They have also emphasized their public education at the lorry stations, because you know that sometimes you'll be sitting in transport buses and then people will be selling drugs on the buses, state transport, trotro. They are selling, all kinds of drugs in the buses. So they have engaged, GPRTU to ensure that buses are rid of people who peddle drugs.
On the National Health Insurance Scheme, the minister outlined some introduced measures to ensure the efficient provision of health services, which would be beneficiary to the public as well as health service providers.
Now, I'm also happy to inform you that under the ministry's oversight, the National Health Insurance Authority is extending capitation to 3 more regions. Very soon, we will be extending capitation to Upper East, Upper West, and then Volta region. They are very happy that we'll be extending capitation to these regions, and I'm sure that by the close of this month, we would have launched, the program. The National Health Insurance Authority has also introduced instant ID card based on biometric data, and this will also go a long way to help curb double registration and claims of patients. Now, other introductions of some of the new innovations is the new claims processing centers across the country. In 2010, claims processing centers was established in Accra, and the CPC model was rolled out in Tamale, Cape Coast, and Kumasi. The center in Accra takes care of claims from Greater Accra, Volta, and Eastern region, whilst the center in Tamale takes care of northern, upper east, and upper west region. The Kumasi Center processes claims from Ashanti, Bronga, Hafu, and Cape Coast also take care of central and western region. The rollout plan for the year 2014 is to cover the claims of 65% of providers nationwide. This percentage includes most hospitals and major providers, representing approximately 80% of total claims in terms of registration.
Madam Sherry Aite also touched on the medical and dental councils. She promised to ensure that professionalism is upheld among practitioners.
There's the need to provide them with enough resources for capacity building so that they can visit hospitals and then conduct professional ethics on doctors practicing, because that is the responsibility of the council. They should be able to go to any hospital unannounced and see whether doctors, dentists, all medical staff are practicing well. They have better patient relationship, and because they are the ones who register them, and they can withdraw their practicing license anytime. But because they don't have all the necessary logistics, they are unable to visit a lot of hospitals. But I believe that they have increased their registration fees, and they will generate more IGF. And I hope that with the increase in revenue, they will be able to reach out everywhere to inspect, monitor the practice of doctors.
Last but not least, Madam Aite commented on the Pharmacy Council and her intention to engage a roll call of pharmacy outlets in the country to eradicate all fake drugs and unqualified pharmacists in the country.
We expect that the council will be able to, this year, to live up to their mandate, because there are too many pharmacies operating in this country. Some of them are selling fake drugs. And we expect that the council must now do more monitoring, inspection, to ensure that these pharmacies are registered properly under the law, and not that they wake up one day and then they open pharmacy shops. And then the law also says that every pharmacy shop must have a qualified pharmacist working there. But I think that in most cases, you visit pharmacy shops and they don't have pharmacists. So we think that this year we will do a roll call of all the pharmacy outlets, ensure that they have qualified pharmacists, because we still have a lot of pharmacists in the system. They don't have jobs, and I think that this will be a nice opportunity to create job opportunity for the pharmacists that are coming out of the universities, and also to step up accreditation of new pharmaceutical facilities, and also to conduct the pharmacy professional qualifying exams.
The minister advised all stakeholders to work together and make good use of the limited resources to provide better health service to Ghanaians.
Expert engineer Robert Wood has stressed that the $622 million used by the government to construct the Bui Hydro Dam could have been used to provide the same amount of energy in the area of solar energy for the country. Government late last year commissioned the Bui Hydro Dam with about 400 megawatts capacity to feed into the national grid. The project was initiated under the Eswal Kufuor regime and completed a year ago under President John Dramani Mahama. But Engineer Wood has questioned the decision in spending such huge amounts on the project. Speaking in a news conference as part of the Convention People's Party's 65th anniversary, he contends that the country could have gotten more power if that amount had been invested in the development of solar power stations. He cited countries like Germany, where infrastructure for solar energy has cost the country less as compared to the amount used for the buoy in providing hydro energy. His comment comes at a time the country is faced with an acute power shortage with limited power generation capacity. The most valuable suggestion from several quarters in government has been for the country to explore alternative sources of power, with solar being on top of its agenda. Let's now move on to other stories now, but this time around in the area of stocks, as we bring you updates on how the currencies and commodities performance on selected markets across the African continent fared. It's now time for some best bets to stay. You're still watching the business headlines here on BTA with me, Charles Ide. We're going for a short commercial break. When we do come back, more stories coming your way. You most welcome back from that break. Now, the International Monetary Fund has warned that Argentina's legal defeat in its fight against hedge fund investment may have wider implications on the country's economy. A U.S. Supreme Court ruling sided with bondholders demanded Argentina pay them a whopping amount of $1.3 billion. Now, the IMF said that it was concerned about broader systematic implications. Meanwhile, the ratings agency S&P cut Argentina's credit rating, warning that the ruling made it more likely that the country could default on its promises.
Argentina has reacted angrily to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling which says it will have to pay $1.3 billion to bondholders. Buenos Aires claims paying up will force it to default as it has limited funds. Ratings agency S&P has already cut Argentina's credit rating by 2 notches to CCC- in the wake of the court's decision. Argentina's economy minister said, "We're going to send our lawyers to talk to the judge. That's what I'm going to instruct at this moment on behalf of the President of the nation. On the one hand, we'll take steps for a restructuring under local legislation. On the other hand, we will send our lawyers to speak to the judge to see what he's referring to when he says he isn't pushing Argentina into a default." The threat of a financial crisis has sparked protests. The problem stems from when Argentina negotiated a debt swap at a reduced rate with investors back in 2001. Those who refused the terms have been fighting to be paid in full ever since. The U.S. court has now ruled in their favor.
Now, the World Cup in Brazil is a big bonanza for many businesses around the world. In Bangladesh, clothing manufacturers have won at least $500 million in export orders to produce World Cup T-shirts, caps and flags for fans globally. The new orders came at a time when the industry was in crisis after a string of disasters.
It might be a long way from Brazil, but there is no escaping the World Cup here in Dhaka. The merchandise is everywhere, and this is big business. Bangladeshi manufacturers received orders worth more than $500 million from sportswear giants like Adidas and Puma.
We exported more than 1 million pieces, which can translate, 3.5 million US dollars equivalent. And I'm sure, if you look at the entire country export, like not only the T-shirt, other merchandise like the flag, caps and other stuff, altogether I'm sure the business is around $1 billion.
The World Cup merchandise is made mostly in China and Bangladesh. The Bangladeshi clothing industry has been under scrutiny following a series of disasters. The World Cup orders came as a big boost. Following the accidents, Western retailers have set up teams to inspect safety standards in factories across Bangladesh. Several factories which were not compliant have been shut down. Western brands have already warned that they will look elsewhere if the safety standards are not improved.
I don't think we should take our buyers for granted. There is a project in Myanmar that the EU has invested in. It's just investing in building their capacity. There are newer markets like Ethiopia opening up. There is a population-hungry India, where they are going to grab more business from us.
For the moment, the exports keep growing. They are expected to reach a record $25 billion in this fiscal year. That's more than 80% of the country's annual exports. The industry has the potential to change the lives of millions of people if the manufacturers can strike a balance between their low-cost production base and safety standards. Anbaras Nithyanarajan, BBC News, Dhaka.
Now, Islamist-led militants have attacked Iraq's biggest oil refinery with mortars and machine guns, reportedly attacking from two different directions. Smoke billowed from a spare parts warehouse on the site at Baiji, 210 kilometers north of Baghdad. Government forces have made new airstrikes on militants advancing towards the capital. Fighting is also reported in the western city of Ramadi.
Have attacked Iraq's biggest oil refinery with mortars and machine guns, reportedly attacking from two directions. Smoke billowed from a spare parts warehouse on the site at Baiji, 210 kilometers, 130 miles, north of Baghdad, security and refinery sources told Reuters. Government forces have made new airstrikes on militants advancing towards the capital. Fighting is also reported in the western city of Ramadi. The government is fighting to push back ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, and its Sunni Muslim allies in Diyala and Salahuddin provinces, after the militants overran the second city, Mosul, last week. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki appeared on television with Sunni Muslim and Kurdish leaders on Tuesday to issue a call for national unity in the face of the advance. They demanded that non-state forces lay down their arms. However, such a call is unlikely to have much effect as Mr. Maliki has openly sponsored the formation of Shia Muslim militias to fight alongside regular Iraqi troops, the BBC's Jim Muir reports from Erbil in northern Iraq. UK Prime Minister David Cameron will hold talks with his senior security advisors on Wednesday to discuss the crisis, warning that ISIS represents a real threat to Britain. Oil stores attacked. The attack on the refinery started at 4 o'clock, 1 o'clock GMT, from outside two of the three main entrances to the refinery, according to Reuters. Militants destroyed some stores of oil after entering the complex, refinery staff told AFP news agency. Foreign personnel were evacuated earlier but local staff reportedly remain in place, with the military defending the facility. Militants in the western province of Anbar, where the capital is Ramadi.
That's it by way of the business headlines here on BTA. From me, Charles Ide, and the rest of the team, many thanks for watching.